I heard a concept the other day which I found extremely interesting. It was a concept that people with lower IQs actually make more money. Now, I cannot confirm this to be an absolute fact, but I found the concept of it quite interesting to begin with, and I think it does make a little bit of sense. Now, obviously, we're not talking about people with massively reduced IQs versus geniuses. There's obviously going to be, well, a common sense element there, which means that people who are extremely smart are going to make more money than people who are absolutely not. With that being said, though, it does make sense that the average person has more potential than a smart person when it comes to business, and let's think about why that is. This is going to be a topic which actually applies to a lot of people because no matter where your intelligence level is in terms of IQ, there's something which everybody can relate to here, and that's the fear of, well, worry as a whole. Let's talk about that and how this affects us in business and ultimately why it holds us back. Let's get started with this now. So let's talk about the overarching concept first. The concept was that people with lower IQs make more money than people with extremely heightened IQs. And I was thinking for ages, why might that be? I had to look into it a little bit more to figure out why this is. And then when I looked at the actual reasoning for it, it made perfect sense. And when I tell you about it, you'll understand why it is too. The concept is, people with extremely high IQs have a tendency to think things out extremely logically. Let's talk about starting a new career or starting a new business, which are all going to be forms of income, right? So let's say I'm starting a new career. As an average intelligence person, I'd probably just think, this is a good job, I'm happy to have it. When starting a business, I'm thinking, well, this is going to be something that could enrich me massively, and I'm happy that I'm starting this. But this is the thing, somebody of extremely heightened intelligence would be an absolute chief strategist and a master at strategy. But this actually can negatively impact them. Because this person's always worrying about what goes wrong and how things might go wrong. And this ultimately can hold them back. And if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. Most people will not really look at things in too much detail, and others with extremely, again, heightened IQs will think about every single scenario as to how it could play out. Unfortunately, though, this stops most people from starting a business as they overthink things too much. They overemphasize what happens if things go bad and don't talk enough about what happens if things go good. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, you might see the opposite happen. And whilst that might be seen as a bad thing, and whilst most people in business will statistically do lose anyway, no matter where you are on that IQ spectrum, the person who starts has a much higher chance than the one who doesn't. And if it's overthinking that's holding someone back from even starting, they're never going to make it because, well, they haven't even started. If you want to win, you have to have a card in the game. So it makes perfect sense when you think about it like that, right? But again, like I said at the beginning, this is a topic that everybody can relate to. The overarching concept I've just discussed, but the concept of overthinking about if things don't play out in the way that we wish is something that everybody here can understand. So how do we cure that feeling? How do we cure that fear and get on making the money and doing the things that we know we need to do? Well, there's a few ways to do this, and I think the first one is just the common old one of experience. It's hard to have confidence in something when you don't know much about it, and that's just an obvious fact. If you asked me to go fly an aeroplane right now, I'd probably be pretty nervous because I don't have a pilot's license. Whereas if you asked me to go drive a car, I'd be fine with it because I have a driver's license, I've been educated in the field. Business is just like that. If you ask me to start an eBay shop, I believe with almost full conviction that I could do it to a successful level because I've done it before. But when starting out, you don't have that experience. So the first thing that you must do is take the plunge. Once you're into your second time, whether it's a different business, a different field or not, you start to build a confidence, not in the industry, not in the business that you've decided to specialize in, but in yourself. You think, well, I've done this once before, twice before, 3 times before, and you understand that this is something that you can do. So when that golden opportunity does present itself, you're there to capitalize upon it. And if we think about that, the person who never even started is still going to be worried about the circumstances of it and what may play out. Whereas a person who actually was brave and took the initial plunge will now have more experience, ironically, than the smarter person. So we have to ask who really is smarter in that scenario. I think that's one of the big reasons that holds people back. The what if, because they don't have any experience. Once you get the experience, it becomes almost second nature because you've done it before and you can do it again. With that being said, I think there are other factors that often hold people back in business. The main one is not looking at things with a level head. Again, we just spoke about this to a degree, but people often talk about what happens if things go wrong. You see some people who are a bit more naive talk about what happens if things go right, but I'm not even going to say it's a bad thing to begin with. Because who starts a business or a concept thinking about what happens if I fail? There should be no room for failure, and if you fail, you fail. That's unfortunate. But you shouldn't be setting out with a new project thinking, what if I fail? Do you want to fail? Probably not. So if you don't want to fail, why are you even considering it as an option? If it happens, it happens, and as long as you're not risking too much, whether it's, well, anything really, you're good to go. But the whole concept of weighing up things unevenly does hold people back a lot. I mean, why are people going to talk too much about what happens if things go wrong or what happens if things go right? A level head is all you need, but I would always set out with the premise of wanting to win, because otherwise, why even get into it? No one ever sets out to lose, and if you do, well, that's a bit questionable to begin with. But you should want to win in these fields, and if you do, there's not really a problem with believing that you can. So, as much as we might weigh up the odds of everything, if we do it fairly, we can say, okay, I'm starting this new venture, whatever it is, and I'm not doing more than I can afford to risk in terms of time, in terms of capital, in terms of, reputation, all that sort of stuff. I'm not doing more than I can risk, and with that being said, I'm fine if it goes wrong, but I don't want it to, and now let's focus on the good stuff. If it goes right, I might make more money, I might have more free time, I might have more status, all these kinds of things that people are ultimately after. This is how we must restructure it in our minds, because there's no point really even thinking about what happens if things go wrong, because again, you shouldn't be risking any more of a position than you want to lose, and subsequently there can't be anything that bad because you're comfortable with the potential negative outcomes, whereas the positives can be unlimited, again depending on what you're working on. So that makes a lot more sense in my opinion. Another big one is education. Now this is actually a different point to the first one, because we spoke about the fact that people who've done things before know how things work, but that also doesn't mean that people who haven't done things before can't learn fairly quickly or might not have a natural talent towards it. And this, going back to the smart people thing, is something that a lot of smart people seem to really focus on. People talking about the fact, I've got a degree, or I've got a master's, or I've got a PhD. And it's like, okay, so let's say you've got a PhD in biochemistry. Great degree, great for you, I hope you're happy with it, but is that really going to help you in the world of business explicitly? Well, it might do, but obviously that's not what the degree sets out for. And will that degree, and by the way, I am doing a degree so I know what it's like, will that degree even help you in the world of business in real life? And that's a very different question. So looking at someone's qualifications is not necessarily a measure of their skill. So for somebody to sit there and say the CEO of a company must have an MBA or something like that, does that matter? Because there's other CEOs who have absolutely no qualifications, not even school-based qualifications, and that's because they started the companies themselves. It's all about the different scales, but we must understand some sort of measures do not translate into results in other fields. Just because you did well in your degree doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be a great entrepreneur, and just because you didn't do great in your degree doesn't mean that you cannot have a successful business, even if you didn't go to school or university or anything like that. Real world application is oftentimes a lot more important to most people than academic results, and that's what people need to realize. So what I'd be saying to anybody looking to start any kind of business, don't let the overthinking element get you down, because there's no point in it. Overthinking only delays things that you want to happen anyway, to the point where you sit there thinking about it for so long you probably don't even start. And when we think about it in that perspective, what is the point in even thinking about it? We could be cracking on with the work that we need to do and actually getting ourselves into the position that we want to be in. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If it was a good one for you guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm not too sure if you guys will like these sorts of videos that I make. Obviously, sometimes I like to talk about my personal businesses, but I also like to talk about what I learn, and I'm trying to learn along the way, to reassure myself and to also hopefully spread a positive message to you guys out there too. So again, to anybody looking to start anything, don't let the overthinking element get you down. Just remember, you might as well get on with it. All of the time that is spent thinking is probably doing you more harm than good. The person who puts things into action is the one that succeeds. And with the way that I like to think about things, I don't really want to leave myself with enough time to even have doubt. If I have an idea, I want to get on with it now, because otherwise, even, for me who has made businesses in the past or has done other things, or could even make a video like this talking about this, even for me, these sorts of fears can creep in. So to avoid that, I try and work on things straight away. I try lock in a time period, so I'm like, so for the next 7 days, 14 days, I'm going to work on this, that, and that's how it's going to work. And that, generally speaking, helps. But, like I say, it doesn't matter where you are, what you've done, what qualifications you have. It doesn't mean you can't be great at something, whatever you want to be. Well, we must understand this, and we must understand that the only way to get there is through action, as all of this theory and thought doesn't actually progress us anywhere. It's about taking that knowledge and actually implementing it into the real world. So with that being said, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in our next video. Goodbye for now.